For the first time in recent history, a foreign nation has bombed the capital city of a South American country, and that nation was the United States of America. If that sentence doesn't immediately grab your attention, consider this equally disturbing development from the same week. A member of the Canadian Parliament has publicly stated that Canada is actively preparing for potential military conflict with America. We're not talking about some fringe politician making noise for attention. We're talking about serious government officials in a country that shares the longest undefended border in the world with the United States, now openly discussing the possibility of armed conflict with their southern neighbor. Donald Trump has declared on camera aboard Air Force One that Greenland will become American territory within 2 months. This isn't speculation or interpretation of vague statements. This is the President of the United States announcing a timeline for the annexation of territory that belongs to Denmark, a NATO ally that has maintained defense agreements with America for decades. Trump has also threatened military action against Mexico, threatened to invade Colombia, and repeatedly pushed for Canada to become the 51st state. The response from the international community has been unlike anything we've seen in the post-World War II era of American diplomacy. Greenland's Prime Minister Moot Egede responded to Trump's annexation threats by stating that their country is not a mere pawn in the games of great powers, that they are a united people, a sovereign nation, and a democracy that demands respect. Those words carry weight because they represent the kind of unified international pushback that American officials clearly did not anticipate. The Nordic countries have responded with coordinated statements of solidarity that demonstrate just how badly Trump has miscalculated the international response to his territorial ambitions. Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland all issued synchronized statements in support of Denmark, making it clear that threats against one Nordic nation will be treated as threats against all of them. This kind of regional solidarity is exactly what American foreign policy used to encourage in allied nations facing external pressure. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has unequivocally urged the United States to put an end to its threats against a historically close ally. The chairman of Denmark's Defense Committee, Troels Lund Poulsen, called the Trump administration's approach not only concerning but seriously threatening for the populations involved. When allied nations start using this kind of language to describe American government communications, something has fundamentally broken in the relationship between countries that have cooperated on defense and security for generations. Canadian Parliament member Charlie Angus has said something that should make every American sit up and pay attention. Canada is preparing for potential military conflict with America. He followed that up by pointing out Trump's controversial business dealings and legal troubles. The rhetoric coming from Canadian officials has shifted dramatically from diplomatic concern to direct confrontation. When Angus says that MAGA has no allies and that Trump won't succeed in intimidating or undermining the Canadian people, he's speaking for a significant portion of Canadian political opinion. What makes this situation even more concerning is that some Canadian media outlets have been systematically downplaying the seriousness of Trump's annexation threats, which means that Canadian citizens may not fully understand the gravity of what their government is preparing for behind the scenes. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro has responded to American threats with language that reflects the depth of anger in Latin America over what's happening. Petro has made strong statements about American actions and drawn comparisons to historical conflicts, asking his audience directly whether these situations resonate with them. Trump has responded by criticizing Colombia's president while simultaneously threatening military action against the country. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has invoked the teachings of Benito Juarez, who taught that respect for the rights of others is the foundation of peace among nations. This historical reference serves as a reminder that Latin American countries have long experience with American intervention and won't simply accept being treated as territories available for the taking. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has announced that American companies are ready to extract minerals and resources from targeted countries. This statement reveals what many international observers have suspected all along about the true motivation behind Trump's territorial threats. When administration officials openly state that they're prepared to access resources from sovereign nations, It becomes impossible to frame these actions as being about security or democracy or any of the traditional justifications for American foreign policy. Trump's national security advisor, Mike Waltz, has discussed what some are calling a vision of dividing the world into spheres of influence, a concept that represents a fundamental rejection of the rules-based international order that American diplomats spent decades building and defending. One of the most revealing aspects of this situation involves the complex relationships with Venezuelan political figures. The situation demonstrates exactly how Trump views relationships with supposed allies, as purely transactional. Trump has also posted provocative imagery on social media depicting territorial ambitions, which is the kind of content that would have been considered unthinkable from an American president even a few years ago. It serves as a visual representation of his approach to foreign policy in the Western Hemisphere. Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the United Nations Charter explicitly prohibits threats or use of force against the territorial integrity of any member state. This legal framework exists precisely because the international community learned from the catastrophic consequences of allowing powerful nations to simply annex territory based on claims of strategic necessity or historical grievance. When Trump dismisses Denmark's security efforts in Greenland with mocking comments, he's not just insulting an ally, he's demonstrating contempt for the very concept of international law and cooperative security arrangements. Greenland has emphasized decades of loyalty to NATO partnership and shared security responsibilities with the United States. This loyalty has apparently counted for nothing in the calculations of an administration that views alliances as purely transactional relationships focused on resource access rather than mutual security and shared democratic values. The international response to Trump's territorial threats demonstrates that global solidarity is becoming increasingly vital as democratic nations navigate what appear to be existential challenges. European NATO allies who initially hoped to work with the new administration are finally recognizing that Trump has different priorities than traditional alliance structures, and this recognition is driving countries toward independent defense and economic arrangements. Pope Francis has called for Venezuelan independence and emphasized the necessity of human rights in the wake of political changes. When religious leaders feel compelled to speak out on foreign policy matters, it reflects just how far outside normal diplomatic behavior these actions have strayed. The situation we're witnessing represents a fundamental shift in the international order that has maintained relative peace among major powers since the end of World War II. The consequences of this shift will extend far beyond the immediate targets of Trump's territorial ambitions. When democratic nations begin preparing for potential conflict with each other, when allied leaders express deep concern about American communications, when Latin American presidents use inflammatory language about American supporters, something has shifted that cannot easily be reversed. The global democratic community is responding to these threats with demonstrations of international solidarity. But this response comes at a cost that will be measured in damaged alliances, lost trust, and a diminished role for America in the international institutions that American diplomats helped create.